Breakfalling and rolling are two of the most important skill sets to learn when it comes to injury prevention and building confidence doing activities that are a little less predictable. We can learn these skills as techniques, but it's also important to build up the conditioning in the body in order to make these more accessible to you when the need for that adaptation comes. Ideally, we don't want to have to fall, but if we do have to fall, we want to be able to surrender to gravity and let ourselves go. And the more time we spend on the ground doing these kind of movements and familiarizing ourselves with these positions and transitions, the more comfortable we are doing these movements when we're not prepared to do them, which is when we're going to need them. I have plenty of videos teaching the technique of breakfalls and rolls, but in this video, we're going to focus on the conditioning aspect. So there's a few really good exercises that we can use as mobility and conditioning, building up a little bit of fitness while practicing these skills. Let's get started. First one is a lying side roll. And you're going to notice that we're doing all of these from the ground up. First one, we're just lying down. And we're not going to look at the breakfall positions first. We're just going to play with the roll. So I'm going to bring my arm up overhead. This is the arm that I'm rolling towards. And then I'm going to take my opposite leg and reach it across my body. I'm just going to let that pull me over onto my belly. And then I'm going to go back the same way. Leg reaching across, making my chest the last thing to come off the ground. And you can do that a couple of times. Might be helpful to keep your arms up overhead, both of them. Reaching back with that leg and getting over. You can try this on the other side as well. Reaching with the leg, arms up overhead so they don't get in the way when you're rolling over. And going back, reaching with that leg. Nice and slow. Try and get a bit of a spinal twist before you let yourself roll into the next position. Reaching back, extending that leg, feeling that stretch in the hip before you roll over. The other variation for this is reaching with the arm first instead of the leg. So still the arm that I'm rolling towards is overhead, and the other arm is just going to reach across my body, and that leg is going to be the last thing to come off the ground. So you can try that 2 times in each direction. Reaching with the arm first. Feels really good going from prone to supine, to me at least. And we'll do that 2 times. Reaching with the arm. Letting that leg be the last thing to come off the ground. And then in the other direction, reaching with the arm. Letting that knee bend. Letting it extend in the opposite direction. And then coming across. And again, we can do this in both directions. Reaching with the arm. Letting that leg counterbalance by extending in the opposite direction until it's ready to go. Arm across the body. Reaching over. And letting that leg be the last thing. Do one more. Reaching across to prone, and then reaching back, counterbalancing with the leg, getting a nice spinal twist before letting myself go over. And the next step in this is to actually bring our breakfalls into it. So our back breakfall looks like this. You should remember this from a previous video, I have my knee bent, foot flat on the ground, other leg is just hovering in the air, arms are about 45 degrees to the side, fingers are spread, chin is tucked, head's off the ground. So from here, we're going to transition to a side breakfall position. So I'm going in this direction, so I'm going to lift the opposite hand, reach across my body, place it down right behind my head, because this is protecting my head if I'm getting into this fall position. Now I rock over, and I'm in that side breakfall. To go from side breakfall to forward breakfall, I'm going to feed my elbow through the arm, and then lay face down. You can come back in the same direction. So I'm going to push up with this arm opposite from the direction, or the same arm of the side that I'm rolling towards, and I'm going to feed that arm through that space, bringing the leg over, and then bring that hand down back into this back breakfall position. So we'll do one more time, reaching that arm across the body, transitioning to that side breakfall. So one hand still 45 degrees from my body, the other hand's right under where my head would touch the ground, or I can actually put it behind my head, right behind my ear. And then I'm moving into the forward breakfall position. So I'm bringing this arm up through that space, letting that leg come across and down. So now one of my elbows is close to the other knee. On the other side, the elbow and knee are very far apart. All right, so let's try this on the other direction. So we're going to just transition to our other side forward breakfall. Find your space. And then we're going to reverse that again. So I'm just feeding that top arm through, bringing that leg over, getting into my side breakfall position, and then rocking to the back breakfall. And then back in the other direction from that back breakfall position. Make sure everything's in place. Head's off the ground, chin's tucked, legs up in the air, other foot's flat, hands are 45 degrees from the side. And I'm raising my arm across the body, keeping that other arm in place, bringing that hand behind my head or on the ground where my head would be if I hit the ground with the head. And then I'm going to let that other arm come up. The elbow is just going to feed through that other arm. And then my leg's going to come across the other leg and lay down next to it. And then my elbow and knee are very close together. My other elbow and knee are very far apart. And this is my forward breakfall position. My arms are right under my head, and I'm in this pretty comfortable lying position. So this is our back breakfall, side breakfall, forward breakfall transition. If you haven't learned this yet and it's a bit confusing, that's why I showed the vanilla lying side roll first, where you're just reaching over with your leg. So if you haven't learned the breakfall positions clearly yet, or you haven't memorized it, you can warm up with that kind of a movement. So the next thing we're going to do is do a little bit of a front rock in a few different variations. So we're going to start laying on the back, and you're just going to rock little rocks. So you can use your knees, your legs, and your hips to create this rock, and you can use your arms swinging. If you put them both together, then you get a nice little synchronization between the upper and lower body movement. You can swing your arms more to get a bigger rock. And if you want to swing your arms as hard as you can press the ground once you finish that swing. So swing the arms to the hands on the ground and get from your rock to a seated position. You can come up in a figure 4 or in a split stance, one foot in front of the other, or in a squat stance. You can use your hands to push up to either one of those end positions. So pushing to a half kneeling position, pushing to a split stance, or pushing to a squat. So you want to have each of those possibilities in your repertoire so that you can pull them out whenever they're most appropriate. Let's look at one more here. We're going to do rocking, but with a bit of a rotational twist. Again, these are all things that I've covered in previous videos and in some of my courses and online classes. So make sure that you check those resources if any of this stuff is unfamiliar, because I explained it in a lot more detail there. So for the rotation, all I'm doing differently is once I'm up here, instead of just rocking straight back down, I'm just turning my hip. So I'm here, turn my hip. And that changes my direction on the way up. Down, turn, come up. You have to do it when the ground is on your upper back, so that your hips can move and be in a different position when you're on the way up. You can also do something with your upper body in order to make that happen as well, or to make your rotation bigger. And you can also kind of push yourself off on the way down in order to make that rotation happen. And again, this is something you can do with your arm swing, especially if you have a hard time getting up to sitting position. You can get used to the timing of when to put your hands down to make the most out of the swing. And then the last thing we'll do here is try rocking to a standing position. So the easiest way to do this is going to be to come up in a figure 4 sit. So let's just do that variation. So I'm going to rock, I'm going to come up. You can use both hands to your split squat or to your half bend sit, and then stand straight up. All right, so I'll do it this way. I'm rocking, coming up to a half bend sit, and then standing up. Back down, rocking. You can push with both hands or with one hand, and stand up however seems natural for you. You can try these other variations, split squat, or full squat, and use your hands as needed. There's something that you get out of using your hands in these movements. So even though it's more advanced to do these rolls and rocks without your hands, you are learning how to synchronize different parts of your body and use your body movement in order to transfer your body weight and make the movement a little more easier. So make sure that you're not just playing with trying to make it challenging by doing it with no hands, but also trying to do it as efficiently and least energy as possible, which is going to mean doing it in one big rock coming up. Next drill that we're going to play with is going to be a break fall from a crawling position. So we're going to do this slow, and we're going to start in a knee hand crawl. So here I am in my knee hand crawl, and all I'm going to do here is I'm going to extend one leg back, and the same side arm is going in front. So I'm extending my leg back, my arm forward, and then there's an empty space where I extended my arm and leg. So that's where I'm going to fall. So my body is going to go where my hand and foot are, where my hand and foot just moved from. So I'm moving that arm and leg, and then I'm lowering myself down into that end position. And you can bring yourself back up, so you can get yourself back up to your crawling position, and then other side, extending your arm and leg out, dropping into that space, and getting into that forward break fall position. Obviously, this is something you can do slow and controlled. It's what we're doing right now, but it's also something that can be done with a little momentum once you get used to it. So I can be here, and instead of moving that arm and leg slowly and shifting my weight, I can just move it all of a sudden, and I have nothing to support me, and I'm dropping into that space. Obviously, wait until you're comfortable with this skill before doing it with that momentum. But this is where it becomes a little bit more about conditioning. All right. Next, our back break fall. I'm in an inverted crawl position. And usually in inverted crawl, my fingers are going to be pointing out, or they're going to be pointing back in order to help me post up. When we're doing a break fall, we're going to want our hands pointing forward so they can move out of the way a lot easier without getting stuck on anything. So fingers pointing forward, lifting the hips. We're going to start slow. So I'm extending a leg out, and then I'm going to lower myself down to my hips and then rock back. And here I am in my back breakfall position, same as when we're doing our lying side roll. And you can kick and rock yourself back up. And then once again, extend that leg, drop the hip, rock back, extend the arms forward, and come back up. Make sure your head doesn't hit the ground. Make sure your chin's staying tucked. And once you're comfortable with the skill and you're ready with it, then you can really just drop. So I'm just dropping. And I'm trying to make my body land all at the same spot. I'm spreading out like a snowshoe. But this gives us a feeling of doing that full break fall without having to worry about falling from a standing position. So once you're ready with it, get into that. But when you're practicing and you're not quite there yet and you're not comfortable with that skill yet, you can practice it slowly and build that coordination. Next, we're going to do back roll toe touch drill. So this is really important when it comes to learning how to roll and developing control in the roll. And basically what it's going to look like is I'm just laying here. Arms are out to the side, same back break fall position, but I'm going to bring my knees up. So first step is just bringing the hips up. But I'm not bringing my knees to the center. I'm bringing my knees to the side. So I can use my hands that are on the ground 45 degrees from my body to push and to help this movement. And at first it might not be lifting your hips very high or reaching very far back with your feet, but eventually you want to be able to touch the ground with your toes, and ideally to do that without touching your head to the ground. So keeping my chin tucked, head up, touching the ground with my toe, not directly behind me, but on that diagonal line. So again, this is going to work with the kind of mobility that you built when we're doing the rotational rock. If you can't touch the ground yet, but you want to practice this reach back, you can position yourself against a wall or sofa or anything and just think about touching that. So that way you're not going to have to reach back quite as far as if you were doing this movement on the ground. And once you get better at this, you can just bring yourself a little bit further away, and that will force you to touch a little further down on the wall. And as you get better and better, you can continue to work your way away from the wall until you can reach the ground. This will help to build some mobility, some flexibility, some coordination in how you move, synchronize with your breath, because if you're inhaling while you're reaching back with your legs, your lungs are taking up space in your body and won't be able to reach as far. So you want to exhale as you're reaching back with your feet. And this is going to help to build core strength. It's going to help to build your stabilization for rotation. A lot of benefits come from this one drill in particular. So make sure that you play with that quite a bit. I think that's one of, if you're going to take one of these drills and work it in to try and strengthen your core, try to strengthen your body's ability to stabilize and improve your ability to roll smoothly, this is the drill to do it with. The next step to a roll after two arms is one arm. So you can try one arm, and there's a little less lateral stabilization with your arm and a little less ability to push the ground in order to get it. I recommend doing the opposite, the same side hand that your legs are going towards, because when you do the full roll, you'll be reaching that arm over to help push you on the way up. So it's good to get that pattern down of reaching that arm along with it. And once you're comfortable with that, you can try with no hands. And what's going to happen if you're not ready for this is you go over and you're just going to plop down to the side. So make sure that you're ready for it. And this way you're really just relying on your core stabilization and the accuracy of your movement. Being able to roll without using your hands is really beneficial when it comes to having to hold something while you're rolling, or do something with your hands while you're rolling, or just not having to rely on them. They're always good to support when they're available, but when they're not available, you don't want to be at a loss. All right, so if you're going to combine these drills into a kind of mobility warm-up or a workout, it's going to look like this. You can do any one of those variations, but I'm going to do one that's a little more fitness focused. So for the lying side roll, instead of slowly transitioning over, I'm just going to think about the forward break fall and the backwards break fall, and I'm sliding this hand under and flipping over as quick as I can. Same thing in the other direction. How quick can I get over? And then the next thing we play with is some front rocking to standing. So I'm going to rock and stand up. And if you want even more of a challenge, you can throw a little rotation into it. You can switch your legs each time. And again, any variation of those movements that you want is going to be helpful. The next one is going to be transitioning from your crawl to breakfall. You can do this quickly. And then the other side, rocking up to a sitting position, crawling, and then dropping. Try to land with your whole body at the same time, if you can. And then finally, our back roll toe touch. So find a good spot and touch. To make this more challenging, just don't take breaks and try and do a high number of repetitions. Try and keep your knees together and feet together for the whole time. This is going to help your rolls very well. So that's a great way to get a warm-up going before you're going to do a little bit more of a high-intensity physical activity, and you'll start to actually improve your break, fall, and roll skills with that warm-up. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you next time.